Good morning, everybody, and hello from South Florida. I'm Debby Montgomery Johnson, the founder of the nonprofit, The Woman Behind the Smile, and your host today of Stand Up and Speak Up, a show that is about each and every one of us. Many of us have something we're hiding, something we're ashamed of, something that through no fault of our own or through our own making we keep hidden, and that in turn keeps us hidden from each other and the world. Good people go through terrible situations. Wise people know when and how to let it go. Everything that happens to us helps us grow, and while it may be hard to see it right away, the most important thing to do is to change your perception about your circumstances. Regardless of what your personal experiences or traumas have been, this showcase series is designed to ignite the light in you, as well as providing safe harbor, education, personal growth, and resources so that no matter where you are on your journey, you'll have the courage to move on when you're ready. Stand Up and Speak Up features ordinary people who've been through extraordinary situations and struggles and found the courage to step out from behind their smiles and speak up about their experiences and the lessons gleaned from those experiences. Everybody heals at a different pace, and we recognize that. So come on in, have a listen, and enjoy the ride at your own speed. Well, like I said, good morning, everybody. It's a beautiful day down here in South Florida, and I know my Canadian friends always laugh when I say that. I'm wishing you all stay warm. But today, it's a great day for a friend of mine that's just come in to visit us from nearby West Palm Beach, Wellington, wherever she's living, but within a stone throw of me. And our special guest today is Miss Tinu Pena. And Tinu, are you there?
I'm here.
I'm really glad you're here. Everybody, Tinu and I met a couple of years ago at a Florida State University James Moran Institute entrepreneurial class. And it was probably, I'm looking at it, 2017. It was right after my book came out. And, of course, I went there to speak about my company, learn about my company, and I walk in and I end up at the end of the 5 days, and everybody knew more about my book and about the woman behind the smile than they did about my company. But I'm back in another class with JMI and Syracuse University, and I started thinking about, a couple of years ago, and I'm like, Tinu, I haven't seen her. I've kind of stalked her on Facebook, and she's done some incredible things in the few years that we have not been together. So, my dear, let me just give a quick bio, because we're going to talk about the things that you've done in your life rather than just having me read it. Okay? But Tinu is currently the editor of BANWO magazine and the owner of A2IO Imprint, the publishing arm of her business consulting firm, Top Consulting Agency. She's a modern-day Renaissance woman with interest in various ventures that she actively pursues. Now, we're going to talk about this modern-day Renaissance woman, because I've not really heard that saying before, and when I heard you say that in an interview, I'm thinking, that's kind of interesting. So, Ms. Tinu, would you please just kind of fill my audience in on who you are? Where did you come from? Where did you grow up? And time's yours for a minute.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. How is everyone doing? I'm so excited to be on Debbie's show. So I am a first-generation American born in Washington, D.C. by Nigerian parents who at the time were students in the United States. I think it was the late 50s, early 60s. So I had the opportunity to grow up partially in the United States, and upon completion of my father's education and my mom's, they returned back to Nigeria, where I then had to go. I had no choice. I was only 6. So we returned to Nigeria. I lived a whole different lifestyle there, going through the school system and just the whole cultural change and the environment change. And by the time I was 19, I had graduated the year previous and had asked my parents, like, okay, I really want to come back. And so, their biggest problem was that we didn't have family here. And I said, you know what? I've been watching a lot of TV shows, and you can make it if you go back. So my parents decided they were going to allow me to go back. And fortunately, there was a family friend of my father who was living in Toledo, Ohio, and that's how I came to come back to the United States by myself. So I came back late I think 1993 or 2. It was winter, and I flew into New York, and it was freezing. And the only thing I had with me at the time, aside from my clothes that were more acclimated for a hot weather, was my father's old jacket or his coat from the 70s. So, and that he gave me $3 worth of quarters and dimes and nickels to, call the people that were going to pick me up. At that time, we didn't have smartphones or Instagram, Facebook, so I didn't know who was picking me up. So long story short, I started asking people, going up to people that looked Nigerian and said, hey, are you looking for this person? And I wasn't able to find the people that were supposed to pick me up. So there was this lady there who I had spoken to on the plane and asked her how to use the payphone. And she was watching me, and then she came up to me and said, she doesn't feel comfortable leaving me here at the airport, so she's going to take me with her to her where she stayed, and we're going to call the people that's supposed to pick me up. And I put my faith in, the universe, and I said, you know what, I'm just going to go with her because she was helpful when I was, talking to her on the plane. So I went with her. And from there, we eventually got in contact with the people that's supposed to pick me up. And I got on Amtrak, and I headed to Ohio. So that was the beginning of my journey in the United States.
You are one brave young woman. Oh, my gosh. No, I could say today we would never do that.
I know. I would do that today. Back then, I was a little bit naive and very trusting, green behind the ears, as you would say, coming from a culture where, your neighbor was almost like family. So I didn't see anything wrong with that. Now I probably won't do that. But the beautiful thing that came out of this story of how I, ended up in Toledo was the fact that the woman that picked me up, we stayed at her cousin's house. Her cousin has now been a part of my family since then. When my brother came back as well, because all my siblings were born here, when he came back, he actually landed in New York and stayed with them. So they have become an integral part of my family now. So, I'm blessed to have them.
Very nice. I don't know much about Nigeria. Big country. I actually interviewed a gal that runs a cybersecurity group over there. Fabulous. Now, Nigeria kind of gets the snub especially from Americans. But where did you grow up, and what kind of experiences did you have as a child over there?
Well, I grew up in the capital called Lagos State, it's there's no place you go that is, the perfect environment or the perfect community. There were the ups and downs, but my story was filled with a lot of good memories from just, living with my grandmother and, walking to school with friends and just doing things that I had never been exposed to living in the United States as a youngster. So over there, we weren't really sheltered as much as we were in the United States, that we have to stay in the house or go to the playground. You played wherever, you can play on the streets, you can, and I got hit by a car once, so that was interesting. But life there was different. You had to adapt to, not always having electricity. You had running water that came on occasionally. When you talk about living country style, we had outhouses, and that's, certain communities. So my parents lived in the more modern section, which was about 2 or 3 hours away from where I was schooling. So I had to live with my grandmother because my mom really liked the school we were going to. So it was a Christian school, so she wanted us to go there. So living with my grandmother was totally different from living in my apartment with my parents. So, in Nigeria, you got to be street smart, honestly. And if you're not, you'll be taken advantage of. And they can smell new blood very easily, but the people are so welcoming. Just as, they will take advantage of you. They're so kind that, if your neighbor is cooking, they'll bring food over. Your neighbor can discipline you as a kid, So it's really that village concept that you hear about. It takes a village to raise a child. You see that there. So that was my experience, just going through it as a youngster, and leaving at the age of 19. I wasn't privileged to see some of the business aspects of the country, but what I've come to learn over a couple of years returning back is there's a lot of dysfunction. You have people in legislation, and you have people leading some parts of the country that that their conducts are questionable. But I think the people right now are coming to the point that they're tired. And then they're, demanding change. And we're seeing that all across the world now, where people are vocalizing, that they're dissatisfied with the way things are going, with the economy and just, people's security and everything, and they're demanding change. One of the things that I would just want to note about Nigeria is their human resources. They have a wealth of intellectually brilliant people that, is unfortunate that, because of the state of the economy, the disparity between the rich or the haves and the have-nots is so huge that they are actually losing out on future generation of doctors, lawyers, mechanics, because some of these individuals have to stop going to school after their, primary education, and some after secondary education to now go work. So I don't think that they have a child labor law over there, because I see youngsters that should be in school, hawking, street selling. And this was in the last couple of years that I went back, that I saw that. But culturally, it's a rich country. It has 3 different languages, in which I speak one of them. My parents is from the Yoruba tribe. And they have Igbo, Awusas, and everyone is region-based. So in the northern region of Nigeria, you have the Awusas primarily there, and then in the southwest, you have the Yorubas, and then in the southeast, you have the Igbos. But, there's a bunch of mixing as far as, the different ethnicities are concerned. So people don't necessarily live in, the designated area or whatever you want to call it. People do move around, as you can see in the United States. People go to where there's economic activity, and that's what you see there as well.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. I mean, it's a huge country, and I try to visualize, because you hear about the cities, but I didn't think about you living with your grandmother out and about. And it's such a completely different lifestyle. But you grew up with very well-educated parents. And they wanted, and I heard you say this one time, that Nigerian immigrants are highly educated and they want to get out of poverty, have a better life, from doctors, lawyers, engineers, pharmacists. Now, does that crowd leave Nigeria? Do they come here to the States? Do they go to England? Or do you see them going back? Because you just mentioned that you've gone back before.
Yes. There is brain drain happening, and there are people that they're, professionals that are staying. You're seeing now an entrance in a lot of diaspora looking to go back and see how they can help rebuild the country, and that's a new trend. They are pushing, or they are encouraging diaspora to help come back. But they're not putting systems in place to make it an easy, transition to come back and partake in the redevelopment of the country. Even foreigners that go have to be careful, because you can go into a contract and then, put money up front, and then, something happens and you lose that. And that's the risk, that comes with business. But, millions of dollars, no. So, they have work to do. I think Ghana is doing a great job as far as capitalizing on the return home movement with diaspora, to get them to come back and help rebuild the country and tap into the brain drain that, most of these African countries have experienced. But I think Nigeria has a lot of work to do, and I'm involved in the community here with an organization called Nigerian American for Public Affairs Committee, and another organization called Global African Business Association. And through those platforms, I'm looking to engage and ask those questions. So I'll be, working with the executive director of one of the chambers out in the new capital of Nigeria, which is Abuja. So we're coordinating that to put on an event to discuss not just the tech part of, Nigeria, which is booming right now. I don't know if you guys follow what's happening as far as fintech is concerned and programming. You have a lot of that going on, and Mark Zuckerberg visited an area called Yaba in Lagos, and actually my high school was in that area. And he visited a hub, a computer hub there where you have programmers that he wanted to, tap into that, knowledge base. One of the gaps that I see that they're not really talking about as far as tapping into that knowledge base also is the young girls. I'm not seeing a lot of them being introduced into coding and science and engineering as a career path. So that's where my interest lies.
Well, I'm going to definitely get you in connection with my friend over there, Confidence Shavely. I think you guys would have a really interesting conversation because she works with a lot of young women. And honestly, the only experience that we have with our organization over here with the Nigerians is the other side of the tech stuff, and that's the scammer side. And so that's where we need to make sure that if they could do for good what is being done for bad, it would be phenomenal.
I agree 100%.
And so it's a matter of switching. And it was interesting that you made that comment about the kids, the generation stopping. If they can't get to school, they're obviously not going to be educated, and then that brain drain. I have a friend here who was working with some African countries with bullying prospects and with the kids, sponsoring kids so that they could continue on to school. It's kind of a pay to play, pay to educate, whatever. If your parents can't afford to pay for your school, then you don't go to school. And that's what you're saying is they're not paying for school, so they're going to work. And unfortunately, in my world, the work that some of the young men particularly are doing is not good stuff and taking advantage because they're good at it. So that's going to be a really interesting effort going forward. But I have a note here to myself to get you connected with Confidence. I think you guys would really hit it off. So, well, thanks for that about Nigeria. I encourage people to learn more about those places that we can't get to, that we don't know about, because there's so many misconceptions about things, America too. And with YouTube and National Geographic and all these great resources, we can learn a lot about those countries and feel a little bit more comfortable about being educated about it. So anyway, you left. You came here at 19. I am so incredibly thrilled about you being so brave. But when you got here, you ended up going into the Army.
Yeah.
Which I'm looking at you going, yeah, she kicks butt. She got her boots on. What got you into the Army?
So that's an interesting story. That's actually going to be a little clip of that in my book that's going to be coming out, and we're going to have, hopefully we have time to talk about that. Okay. The name of my book is Engine Her, and is a 4-author, collaboration. Each author tells their journey from, youngster to, where they are in their career right now and how they got to become an engineer. So each book is inside the main book has its own title. So my title is Stilettos to Field Boots. Deb knows me. I love to wear heels. So I thought it was befitting from my girly side to then now my more, strong woman side. So that's why I named it that. But, yeah, I'll tell more about the book when we get to that portion.
Well, it is kind of funny. When I read it, I'm like, stilettos to field boots. And I'm thinking, but she started in the Army. She started in field boots and then went to stilettos.
It's all about morphing. That's the whole premise.
Right.
And I explained that in the introduction. Before I went into the military, I talk about my first heels, and it's in the book as well. And so it kind of ties the story together, how my mother thought, the rite of passage for a woman was to get your first heel, and she made a big deal about it for myself and my sister. And I really was tortured by those heels, so I remember it clearly. So that's in the book as well. I put a little bit, about that in the book. But I decided to go to the Army when I was in Sierra Vista, Arizona. And you're thinking, how the heck you get from Toledo to Sierra Vista? Mm-hmm. So my journey in Toledo wasn't as smooth as I hoped it would be. So I eventually had to leave the place I was staying. And so that's something I'm having to grapple with and deal with. I actually had to talk to somebody in therapy to deal with to deal with what I went through in Toledo. That is not mentioned in the book because I'm still, processing that now at this age. But I left Toledo and moved to Sierra Vista to stay with my maternal uncle, who was then in the Army. And, we had a falling out, and he decided that I needed to leave his home. So I think I had saved about $3,000 of my scholarship money, and the semester was coming to an end. And so one of his friends who I ran into, and I told him what happened, because I was staying on base with another couple that I met the wife at in one of my classes. And so she took me in for a couple of weeks. And so I slept on their couch, and because of the military, the way things are structured, unless you're a dependent, you can't live on base. So I had to think quickly, what was I going to do? And so I found a studio apartment that I couldn't afford, but it wasn't expensive. It's just that I was only making like $4.25 working at an office, a work study. And so the semester was coming to an end, and I was going to run out of money. So I, started looking for work. And that's when I saw the sign in the window said, part-time, full-time job. I'm like, oh, interesting. I didn't know it was an Army recruiting office. So I walked in, and I was like, oh, okay, so tell me about this job. So, as a recruiter does, they want to recruit you. And I was like, this is interesting. So I said, I've never done anything like this. So what is this like? Is it like camping? And the recruiter said, yes, it's like camping. And I got suckered in.
Effective marketing.
That's, right? So that's how I ended up taking the ASVAB test, passing it. And I had really wanted to go into computers at the time. And I was told that the job that they were offering me was in computers. Come to find out, it was in missile systems. And, I ended up going to basic training in Fort Jackson in South Carolina. I went to advanced individual training in Alabama, and then my first duty station was in Fort Campbell. So that's how I became a soldier. I was trying to avoid becoming homeless.
And you saw the world in green boots, which is funny because when you took the ASVAB, I'm sure you did really, really well, and the Air Force would have loved you. So why didn't you go in the Air Force?
So the Air Force had a waiting list, and I didn't have anywhere to stay. And I really actually wanted to go into the Air Force. I think for my personality, it would have been a better fit. Yeah. The Army had openings, so I decided to go into the Army. Okay. So I had to make a split decision.
Well, you did good, and thank you for your service. One thing I did hear, though, when you were in Hawaii, because you were stationed in Hawaii, and my oldest son and his wife are stationed over there with the Marine Corps, do you remember what you said that was your most favorite thing about being in the Army in Hawaii? What you did? The food. Well, tell the food, because the food wasn't at the Army base.
No, the food wasn't at the Army base. The food, they're different. There's the Army there, the Air Force, the Navy, and the Marines. So we're all in separate bases. So generally, we're not supposed to go to the other base to go eat, but the Air Force has they had the best chow hall. So my friends and I, we would go to like the officer section of the base on the Army base. So we would go over mainly to the Air Force Base to go and eat, and I really enjoyed the food. I really did. So that was one of my sweeter memories.
Glad you didn't get caught, but I also saw that you flew in a Black Hawk.
Yeah. I was on a C-130, the big airplane that has no comfort in it, is primarily used to ship cargoes.
Yeah,
I was on that one too. But the story of the Black Hawk was just one of my more memorable ones. I was going to school while in service, and that's one of the things that they marketed to, and I decided to make sure that I capitalized on that. And so after work, I would go to school, and then one period we had to be in the field. And so and one of the things that was mandated that if a soldier had to go to class, the unit had to find a way to get the soldier to class, right? So I was on the big island doing training, and I had to go to class. And it was like, okay, we're going to get you there. So that's when the opportunity came, and I got on the Black Hawk helicopter, and the pilot was so cool. He's like, do you want to see something really, beautiful? And he took me for a ride that I'm reliving it right now and just telling you guys about it. I saw the most beautiful waterfall coming out of the natural, mountain, the greenery on the mountains, everything, the water, everything was so pristine and beautiful. So that was a cool part of what happened to me there. So, yeah.
Well, it makes me smile because my second son is a Black Hawk pilot. And he is not flying in Hawaii today. He is flying across the other pond in the mountains in not a very pretty spot in the world. But he's just an extraordinary pilot, and he became a pilot after he'd done a year in Korea as a Apache crew chief. And when he saw that the pilots got treated better than the crew chiefs, he decided to become a warrant and went to flight school. But amazing helicopters, amazing.
Yeah. And he made a wise decision by becoming a warrant officer. Had I stayed too, I would have gone to officer school. Yeah. Actually, in my book, I talk about that too. How it's important that people in leadership take interest in young people that have talent and nurture that and mentor them. I had a situation where one of my commanders, she was so interested in me, not just being an enlisted, but becoming an officer. However, because I came down on orders and I wasn't in the mindset to say, you know what, can I get a referral letter to my next duty station? So when I came down on orders to leave Fort Campbell to go to Hawaii, I didn't ask for a referral letter. Mm-hmm. And that's how I missed my opportunity to go to officer school. But, officer and warrant officer schools are just, way it gives soldiers the opportunity to really, develop their leadership skills.
Well, I've seen my son in the past 10 years grow to be an incredible man. And, he went right out of high school, too. His older brother went to the Naval Academy and is a pilot in Hawaii now. Charlie got his wings first, and that was one of the crowning moments of his life, was getting his wings to fly the Black Hawk. Just totally amazing. Now, you mentioned that I heard a she, so one of your commanders was a woman. So what are the qualities that you learned that you valued from the military? Because I know there's some negatives to it, but what were the qualities that you valued that you learned from them and from maybe some of the women officers?
Yeah, one of the things I can say I took away from being in the military, there's nothing I can't do. When it comes to that can-do attitude, and I think you and I have had conversations. I don't shy away, and I don't let my fear overtake me. I have learned to confront things as best as I can and move forward. And that has been the story of my life. I didn't know I had that in me before, but that trait has always been in me. So the Army actually helped, build that to the level whereby I'm comfortable taking on risks and going for it. Even, when I want to even when I wanted to, take the easy route out, going back to starting my business, I left a six-figure paying job to now, start a new business that I'm not even pulling six figures yet. But, I'm investing the time to do the work to get there. So that's one thing the Army has really, ingrained in me, is that I can do anything. And when they say, you leave with that can-do attitude, you want to get the job done, you want to do the job right, I try not to be as structured. I'm working on that, but I'm very structured in that when you're given a task, you outline what needs to get done, so, you communicate properly so that whoever is assigned that task can complete it and be successful, so everybody can be successful. So that's kind of what I took away.
Made you a very effective engineer. That's that mentality is, inline, can do, and it's great. So you left the military after 5 years, married with one baby, two babies. Where were you with the family at that point?
At that point, I had my son at the time. Yes. He was born in Hawaii. So when we left Hawaii, I got reassigned to Fort Carson. And that was a very demanding post. They were actually combat ready in that we could deploy at any time. So I was always in the field. So I was really a new mother. And I didn't even know that I was going through postpartum depression at the time, self-diagnosed, by the way. But I saw signs of it later on when I started to hear about postpartum. And I had separation anxiety from my child, because when we would go to the field, I could go to the field for 30 days in a row. And by the time I come back, my child literally would reject me. Don't touch me kind of thing. He won't allow me to pick him up or hug him. So I became a stranger to him. So that, was really hard to deal with. So my husband at the time, we talked about it, and I decided that, it would be best, because I had re-enlisted. I completed my 4 years of service that I originally signed up for, and I re-enlisted for another 4 years. I was going to do 8 years. And so at the 5th year mark, I was like, okay, I don't think I can be a mom and be a soldier at the same time, because you are required to leave your kids with strangers, because we were both in the military. So it wasn't like, one was civilian and one wasn't. We were both in the military. So he had a high probability of being deployed. I had a high probability of being deployed. And we really didn't have anyone that could take care of our child in that case, other than daycare. And I wasn't going to leave my child for a year or 2 years with a stranger. So I decided to leave the military while he stayed in and completed his tenure. And that's how I got, honorably discharged from the military.
Okay. Yeah, it's very difficult. I mean, I was on active duty. My husband was on active duty, and I made the same choice for me, it was 8 years when we came back to the United States, because in Europe I had a nanny. I had help over there. But when I came back to the States, it was daycare, and I was like, I didn't have kids to have the daycare raising them. So it was a choice of mine, like you, to step out of that, because I heard you say one time that children sacrifice while the parents are in the service. They do. I see it with my grandkids, and my son and his wife go to extraordinary measures to spend time with the kids when they're actually home. But it is hard, especially when you're looking at deployments. It's tough.
And you feel guilty. You do.
You do.
You feel guilty. Yeah.
But your son has done extraordinarily well from all that movement and motion and different peoples, right?
Yes. By the time I left the military, he was turning like 3 or 4. So we relocated to Florida, and we've been in Florida since. He has 1 year left in college now. He'll be graduating in management information systems. So I'm looking forward to him either working with me or, going out and getting a job with someone else or another company. But, yeah, he's doing pretty well.
That's good. He learned that can-do attitude from his mama. So now when I saw you with JMI, you had an engineering firm. You still have that firm, but you're Tell us what you're doing now, because you've transitioned again. You're breaking barriers. You're not giving up, but you are now. You've put your focus into something new. Can you explain to my audience what you're doing now?
So I still have the engineering firm. It's no longer an engineering firm. It's more of a sustainability slash project management firm, and that's where I'm shifting to with the company. And then I decided to start another company called Top Consulting, agency, because I was giving away, valuable insights for free. And a friend of mine was like, Tinu, why don't you monetize this? And that's how I decided to do business consulting, helping other small businesses with their business plans and business development and management and marketing. So that's what I'm doing in addition to doing that. Both companies, I'm actually starting them from scratch again because I had an associate with my engineering firm, and so he decided to go a different route, and so I lost my ability to practice engineering because I don't have my license yet. So I'm going to be studying for that. I tried. I just wasn't into the exam. The exam and I are not seeing eye to eye, but it's going to have to see me eye to eye, so that's on me. So I didn't want my company status to go to waste. I had considerable experience in design to begin with, so that was valuable skill set that I needed to see how to convert to something, that I can continue to use under that company name. So since I have my master's degree in project management, I decided to shift the focus on that. And now I'm working on a pilot concept to present to municipalities that are willing to, listen, to encourage their engineering staff to be certified as Envision professionals. And then Envision professionals are just individuals that understand the importance of sustainability and resiliency, and they learn how to factor that in when they do develop their scope of work. They develop, they're doing capital project planning and whatnot. So I'm, working on a presentation, and one of the commissioners in Palm Beach Garden has expressed interest. So I'm trying to scale it down because my business financial advisor said that's too much information to give them all at once. You just want to give them a little bit and then draw them in so they can hire you to come and give them the rest.
There you go. You've been very creative and very good at repurposing your careers. And I say that because I saw one time where you had just said I was fired, and I'm thinking, well, I've been there, and I don't look at it as being fired. I think I wrote to you and said I think we repurposed our vision and our life. And honestly, though, for me, repurposing back in my 20s really set me on a different path, which was the one I was supposed to be on. So the setbacks, can you kind of address that? The setbacks, were there ever times when you felt like you had failed, or you just say, okay, this is just my next step? How'd you move on from that?
So that would be so I'm going to talk about the two instances in my life where I had either been laid off or fired. That had a huge impact on how I looked at things. And the first one was the company I initially worked for coming right out of college, who I had interned for 2 years. There was some internal chaos with the new manager that really didn't, our energy weren't, in sync. So I had a lot of difficulties dealing with him and another staff member. It eventually came to the point that I had to stand up for myself. And because of that, they laid me off, supposedly because of the economic downturn. But what I took from that was that I had to be my own champion. I had in the past, had a mentor there, but he left because he owned his own company on the side. And that was the first time I realized that companies don't want you to have, they want you to have all your eggs in one basket, which is their basket. And they had the ability to, take away that basket and you lose all your eggs. And so him being my mentor and him having a company, he was kind of like the first individual that I came across that I felt that, subliminally suggested that you can have your own company, and still, do what you want to do. So the first time that I got laid off, I was in shock because I'd never been fired before or laid off before. And I was just panicking because at the time I was then divorced, recently divorced, and I had 2 kids now, not 1 anymore. I had my daughter, and I was freaking out, like, how am I going to take care of these kids? And I'm not one of those parents that, I go after, the court-mandated child support, but I wasn't like, that wasn't money that I was focused on. I was focused on, providing for my kids. So that was, a crazy moment for me. So I started putting out resumes, and while I was doing that, I said, you know what, instead of just waiting around for a job to come, I'm very good at interior decorating. So I started the company Motre as an interior, decorating company. And I got a couple of jobs with that, and then suddenly I got an interview, and then I got hired by another engineering firm. Unfortunately, the economy did tank, and they wanted to put me on per diem to stay with them. Unfortunately, I couldn't take that offer because of daycare, because I had to pull my kids out of daycare and then, regroup budget-wise. So that mindset shift allowed me, 1, to say, okay, let's continue to see what we can do with Motre, and then 2, don't wait, go get another degree, so by the time you are, the economy picks up, you actually have a different skill set that you can use. And so while I was, going to school for my master's degree, I was still putting out resumes, and I got a call for an interview down in Daisy. And that job, I took the job. I stayed there for 3 years because that was a projectized company. So when the construction was over, I had to find another job. So I was interviewing for jobs, but they weren't hiring me, looking to hire me at the level that I needed to be. I didn't want to go a step or 2 backwards. I wanted to, keep moving forward. So I was getting, I was sending resumes out for project managers' jobs. They want to give me a project engineer job, and I said no. So I said, you know what, I'm going to go dust off Motre off the shelf. And that's how I got my business associate to join with me, and then we started Motre again. And I was successful with that for a short while, and then had a hiccup, and work wasn't coming in as I had hoped for, and I decided, you know what, let's start putting the resumes out again. And that's how I got to work for the municipality that I worked for about almost 2 years. And in that space, I had already come into who I was. And it was around the time you had met me. It was 2017 that you met me, and this was around 2018, 2019. And I was confident in who I was, my skill set, the imposter syndrome. I completely threw that out of the window because I was like, okay, if that guy can do it, I know guys are not, they know how to sell themselves, even though they don't have the skill set. So I started watching a few YouTube videos on how men, position themselves, and I said, I'm going to do that. Even if I don't have the skill set, I'm going to say, I'm proficient enough that I can master it on the job. So I took that approach. I got the job, was doing well. However, in certain environments, you have to be in a space where they're open to change. And I came to realize that government is not easily changed as far as processes are concerned. And I try to be as transparent as I can. And when I interviewed, I told them, I'm all about process improvement, efficiency, and being effective. And he said, yeah, that's what we're looking for, blah, blah, blah. They just wanted to fill the position, and honestly. And when I got into the post, my boss was excited because I would always feed him stuff that made him look good. And then when that stopped, because I got over, I was being assigned more work as a manager there, I started to see a different side of him. Long story short, I made a decision in a board meeting that on one of the boards that I served on, and which had some implications to the municipality that I worked for. However, I served on the board for the community that I lived in, and that decision triggered me being fired. Was I upset? Yes. I was upset by the approach they took because, in my opinion, they were trying to ruin my integrity. So I initially had wanted to fight it, and my lawyer said, take that money and go revamp your company. Don't. If you don't intend to work for the government again, it's not even worth it. So I let it go, and now I'm back to being a full-time entrepreneur, consultant, and the stress has gone down, and I'm loving it because things that I had always wanted to do as far as being creative and being stopped, I get to do that with the small businesses that I work with to allow them to give them insights on how to revamp their processes and, improve on their product or, look at other avenues to, diversify their services. So I'm doing that now, and I'm still looking at, a different approach to being in the engineering field, which is more of a supportive role that you generally don't see. So I'm trying to create a niche that doesn't exist. So I'm going to see how that works out over the next few years.
Well, I love how you keep pivoting. You might come to a dead end, what you think many people think is a dead end, and you just kind of take a right and say, okay, let's try this. And you're doing that, and this is the part of that I really love what you're doing now, is that you're working with young women, and I'm talking, 18 to 30? Tell us what you're doing there in the foundation that you started, the magazine, the BANWO magazine, why you started that. Let's hear about that a little bit. I think it's great.
Sure. So BANWO magazine came about, the BANWO Foundation came about because I was getting close to the age that I lost. My mom died, actually. She died at the age of 48, and I was, 45 at the time, and I was freaking out. And I was like, okay, she died, and, we are the only ones that remember her, what would my legacy be and whatnot. So I said, you know what? I want to start something to start encouraging young girls and young women, and I based that decision on my experience. And anytime I served on the board, I noticed that there weren't any younger women than myself or other women in my age category. And I thought, we are missing out on a huge opportunity to mentor the next generation of women leaders. And so I decided to start BANWO in honor of my mom, to create that, to fill that gap, so that, I and other women in the community can start to mentor young women, to teach them, to inform them about, how they can build their own wealth. Because one thing my mom made sure she emphasized with myself and my sister was the fact that as a married woman, you should always have your own money. And it's okay to have a joint account, but you should have your own money just in case something ever happens and you're not stuck. So that kind of stuck with me, and I've always, practiced that. But also owning property is something, that, was emphasized in my family. So I wanted to teach young women on how to be financially independent. And so, that was part of what I wanted to do with the foundation. So teach women how to be financially independent, allow them to, be exposed to the concept of being an entrepreneur, so that they're not putting all their eggs in one basket, like I had to do, because that was how, the workforce was, presented to people, that you graduate from college, you go work for someone, you stay with them for years and years, and boom, you retire. So I'm of the mindset that you don't put your eggs in one basket. You put them in different baskets, because if one breaks, you are still able to stay afloat. So entrepreneurship is something that, we also looked at with the foundation. And then, we are looking to educate the young women about advocacy from a political stance, in that you cannot afford not to be involved in politics. And there's a catchphrase that someone has said to me, and it stayed with me, that if you don't do politics, politics will certainly do you. And you don't necessarily have to be, one to be on the front line, but just calling up your legislator to let them know that a legislation that's about to pass, you're for or against it, is part of your advocacy work. So we're looking to, educate, young women about their role in the political sphere from an advocacy standpoint and how they can continue to be engaged and understand how bills become laws and what the different level of government does for its citizens. And last but not least is, we want to make sure that our young girls are becoming women that put themselves first, because we tend to put everybody else before us, and that has an impact on our health. So, self-care, self-love is something we're also promoting through our health and wellness pillar. So that's primarily how the foundation's focus was summarized, and I launched it. One of the things we do also is to recognize women in the community that are doing phenomenal things in their different industries, profession, and community. And the whole point of it is to make sure we are acknowledging and encouraging them to continue to do better and do better for themselves and the community. So BANWO, that's basically how BANWO came about. And the magazine, I just decided that I wanted to do that because I've always been interested in art, and my parents told me, no, you will go. I was actually meant to be a doctor. And so I flipped on them when I came to the United States. I'm like, hey, I can do something else. So, but I've always been interested in art. So I said, you know what? I've always wanted to write a book. I've always wanted to do a publication, a magazine. Why not? And we can use this as a way to raise funds for the foundation. And so I talked to my board, and it was a go, and Top Consulting volunteered its services, and that's how, we launched the first magazine, and the second issue will be coming out next month.
It's extraordinary, and I listened to something this morning, and I was thinking, I wrote myself a note that says, how are you encouraging women to invest, quote unquote, invest in themselves? And you hit it: health, wealth, relationships, education, spirituality, talents, all that pulled together. And I did hear another gal this morning say the only problem with the youth is that they think they know it all, And if you can get past that part of them knowing it all, especially on in the digital side and the technology side, and actually sit down with them person to person and say, how do you shut off the noise of the world and the idea that you know it all, and learn from the people that have gone before you? And, I was told at one point in my lifetime that I would teach young women. Well, I always laugh. The older I get, the more young women there are out there. And so what we learn as women, comes with time. And I've gotten to a point now where I value what my mother has to say, what my grandmothers had to say, and all the women that I want to be in 20 years. When I was in my 20s, maybe not so. Maybe. So it's great that you're linking the age groups together and really building positives, because the girls aren't getting married. They're not, looking to a husband initially in their early age to take care of themselves. Mm-hmm. And for instance, my daughter, got married young, and now she's a single mom working hard. And when I was hearing you talk about, trying to be a single mom and working, it's very, very difficult. And there's a whole commerce, that can be built around helping single moms, because they're doing a phenomenal job. But it takes a toll on their, health, their wealth, their relationships, their spirituality, everything. If you don't have that can-do attitude and just say, I'm gonna rise from this, I can do this, it can be overwhelming. And I look at your picture in your beautiful yellow dress with a smile and thinking, she's doing it. And I'm sure it's hard, but I love that. I love that dress. I love the smile. I love your attitude. I can see you kicking butt in your boots. So how are people going to be able to get a hold of you if they want to connect with you and see about the foundation, about the magazine, and your new book?
Sure. So for the foundation, we do have a website. That's www.banwo, BANWO, foundation.org. Our phone number is listed on that, so you can get a hold of me that way. If you want to, speak to me directly, my number is, simple, 561-331-2170. Just give me a call, and then we can set something up. If you're interested in my services as a business owner or just someone that needs coaching, my website for my business is TOAPCA.com, and that's for Top Consulting. I'm launching the websites for my book, my personal page where I'm going to be doing one-on-one coaching with young women, aside from what I do, in probably by the third quarter of this year, and that's just going to be tinupena.co. And the A2IO website will be launching the same time that the book is going to be coming out, and we're looking at next month, which is my birthday month. So I might just launch the book on my birthday.
Well, congratulations, and let us know when that's coming out. We'll certainly get that out. I'm sure it's a great read. I'm looking forward to it. So, Tinu, thank you so much for being my guest today. I can't believe how quickly the hour has flown by. You're an extraordinary woman, and I wish you the very best with all your adventures, and especially working with the young women. I have a deep heart feeling for those girls, and I think that if they will sit down and calm the noise, like we all need to do, unplug every now and then listen to some things, put yourselves around good mentors, put yourself around really good people, they will be able to have extraordinary lives, and thank you for being a part of that. So
thank you.
Everybody, thanks so much. Another Stand Up and Speak Up has just flown by. I really appreciate you being here. We are always dedicated to encouraging you to remove the mask of embarrassment and obviously to being your best self. We didn't talk much today about SCARS, the Society of Citizens Against Relationship Scams. I encourage you to go to our website, againstscams.com. If you know anybody who's been a victim of scam or cybercrime, please visit that for assistance and guidance about options and recovery. This episode has been sponsored by BANWOcomplete.com, a vitamin supplement company that supports happy and healthy hands and feet for those with neuropathy. If you or anyone you know struggles with the pins and needles and numbness in their hands and feet, check out our BANWO teaming products at BANWOcomplete.com and use the special code STANDUP for a 5% discount on your purchase. Again, thank you folks for being with us. Please go to my website, thewomanbehindthesmile.com, for additional information and resources. Check out our YouTube channel. All of these shows are on replays with videos, and they're really fun. So have a wonderful day, everybody. Thank you, Tinu, for being my guest, and for all our listeners. Have a great week, everybody, and we'll talk to you next week. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
You bet, hon.